Imagine it's 2019 and one small town in Ohio, a factory that's been around for generations, suddenly shuts down. The owner, Mike, has no choice, his costs are too high, and he can't compete with cheaper imports from China. His employees, many of whom have worked there for decades, are left scrambling for jobs. Fast forward to 2025 and that same factory is back in business. The reason? Tariffs. The US has slapped higher taxes on foreign goods, making imports more expensive. Suddenly, it's cheaper for companies to produce things at home. But here's the twist. While some American factories are benefiting, prices at Walmart are skyrocketing. The cost of cars, electronics, even groceries are going up. That Made in America comeback? It's not as simple as it sounds. So is the world really deglobalizing? Are we pulling back from decades of free trade and cheap imports? Let's break it all down. So what is deglobalization? For years, the world has been getting more connected. Factories in China made products for the US, tech companies in Silicon Valley relied on engineers in India, but now things are shifting. Countries are putting up walls, economic ones. Tariffs, trade restrictions, even political tensions are changing how business is done. Some are calling this deglobalization. But is it really happening? Well, let's look at the data. Global trade hasn't exactly collapsed, but the numbers do tell an interesting story. The World Trade Organization predicts global trade growth will slow to 0.8% in 2024, down from 2.5% in 2023. That is a big drop. The share of foreign goods in US supply chains fell from 14% in 2018 to 11% in 2023. In 2022, for the first time in decades, US imports from Mexico surpassed imports from China.
Today's video is made possible because of Microsoft Teams. So a lot of people don't realize this, but Microsoft Teams is not just for big companies. Maybe you're launching a startup or you have a side hustle or even just managing your own personal project. You can use Microsoft Teams for free, no subscription needed here. Sign in to schedule and join video calls up to 60 minutes. You can chat, share photos and files, and keep everything organized in one place. For me, it changed the way I work. See, I run a video content agency and we used to juggle so many different platforms, apps, logins, passwords. Now everything in our ecosystem is in Teams. I was pleasantly surprised at how everything here is so integrated, and now your messages and your workflow is all seamless in one place. Microsoft Teams is totally free for individuals. You don't need a subscription, and you can access premium features for free. You can check it out right now. Here's the link. I'll also put the link down in the description. And now back to the video.
American companies are shifting production to closer, more friendly countries. And this is what experts call friendshoring or nearshoring, moving production out of places like China and into allies like Mexico, India, or Vietnam. So globalization is not dying, it's just getting a makeover. In 2018, Trump started hitting China with tariffs, extra taxes on imported goods. The goal? Make American products more competitive and bring back manufacturing jobs back home. It didn't stop there. In 2024, Trump, running for re-election, announced a 10% tariff on all imports, plus a 60% tariff on China. The total cost of tariffs on Chinese imports so far? Nearly $200 billion. In response, China hit back with its own tariffs, targeting more than $100 billion worth of US goods on things like soybeans and cars. So who's actually paying for this? Well, we are. Here's the thing, tariffs sound like a punishment for China, but in reality, American businesses and consumers feel the heat more than anyone, with higher prices for everyday stuff. A study from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that US consumers paid nearly 100% of the cost of Trump's tariffs. The average American household paid an extra $1,300 per year due to tariffs on Chinese goods. But what about jobs? Isn't the whole point of this to bring back jobs to the US? Well, while some US manufacturing jobs were saved, companies started automating more, replacing people with machines. American farmers got crushed. Soybean exports to China fell 75% in 2018 after China retaliated with tariffs. Big companies aren't sitting around waiting to get hit. They're shifting their supply chains in real time, even increasing prices. Apple is moving 25% of iPhone production to India. Nike has been cutting production in China and expanding to factories in Vietnam. Tesla is doubling down on other factories to avoid US-China trade tensions altogether. So these companies aren't bringing jobs back to America, they're actually just moving to cheaper, more stable locations that aren't China. Trade policy has become a huge battleground in US politics. Trump made tariffs a signature issue, but Biden didn't exactly roll them back. See, in fact, Biden kept most of Trump's China tariffs in place and even added some new restrictions on tech exports to China. Trump has been threatening and imposing tariffs on Mexico and on Canada, but But here's the paradox. No matter who wins, tariffs and trade restrictions seem to be the new normal here. American leaders, both Republicans and Democrats, are pushing for less dependence on China and more self-reliance. Even China has its own de-Americanization strategy. See, China is investing heavily in self-sufficiency, especially in tech and semiconductors. The Chinese government launched its Made in China 2025 plan to dominate industries like AI, electric vehicles, and biotech without relying on Western suppliers. In 2023, China's imports of US semiconductors dropped by 30%, while it's doubled its chip purchases from South Korea. Instead of relying on the US, China is strengthening trade with other countries. Like in Russia, oil imports from Russia to China hit a record $81 billion in 2023. Then there's Brazil and Africa. China is now Brazil's largest trading partner, and it's investing heavily in African infrastructure. Then there's the Middle East. Saudi Arabia and China signed $10 billion worth of trade deals in 2023. The US dollar has been the king of global trade, but China is pushing its own currency, the yuan, as an alternative. 23 countries now use the yuan for trade with China, reducing reliance on the US dollar. I made a whole separate video about BRICS nations competing with the US dollar. Check that out and make sure you're subscribing to my YouTube channel so you don't miss that. Today, China and Russia trade almost exclusively in yuan and rubles now, cutting their dollar out of their transactions. So could deglobalization actually be a good thing? Well, let's be real, there are pros and cons to all of this. Let's start with the pros. Some American jobs are coming back, there's less reliance on China, which could mean more national security, and countries like Mexico and India are clearly benefiting from these new investments. But what about the cons? Well, everything costs more for consumers, US businesses reliant on global supply chains are struggling more than ever, and it's causing tension between these two countries, which only gets worse. So what's next? Where are we headed? Is this the end of globalization? Not exactly. Instead of one big connected world, we're moving toward regional trade networks. Think US, Mexico, Canada, Europe, and Asia Pacific as blocks. Even if Trump's tariffs do go away, countries have learned a lesson. Don't rely too much on one place, like China, for everything. So what should you do? How does this affect you? The world isn't shutting down trade, it's just changing who trades with who. But the big question here is, are we ready for it? What happens to the US economy if everything suddenly becomes so much more expensive than it's already become because of inflation over the past 5 years? Let me know your thoughts below in the comments. Do you think deglobalization is good or bad? And let me know, would you rather on a personal level pay more for something you know is made locally or pay cheaper for something imported from, let's say, China?